Hey y'all, it's Zoe here, your nutrition peer, back here at Nutrition Prep Notes. Today we're talking about overcoming test anxiety. Stay tuned. Okay y'all, so in today's video, I'm not really going to be focusing on a scientific or psychological approach to overcoming test anxiety. I really want to just give you some practical tips and steps on what I did to overcome testing anxiety or being anxious about this exam. If you watched my first video, I talked to you about being overwhelmed when I got ready to study for this exam. And of course, the main reason for me being overwhelmed as it relates to this exam had to do with simply just not knowing enough about the exam. And so what I did to start helping myself get into the right frame of mind to study was really research as much as I can about the exam. And when I did, I came across the BCNS Certifications Handbook, and I read that handbook cover to cover. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, we've talked a lot about this right here, which is the BCNS Certifications Handbook. And what I did, y'all, I got this printed offline, and I had the office supply store, print it for me and then bind it for me. And so I got it printed, and that's how I used it to study, went through it, got my sticky notes, wrote a lot of annotations, and got highlights in here. So that's what I did, and that helped me because I liked having physical copies. And then the next thing I did was I printed off a copy of the scope of practice. Now, on my channel, I have a detailed long-form video where I take you through the scope of practice, and I outline why it is so important for you to have a good grasp on this as you're studying for the exam. So definitely check that video out. I have it linked below. The next thing I did was I got a copy of the content outline, and yes, I think I have a coffee stain on here. I've got annotations on here, y'all, so lots of good information on there. I got a copy of that. And then I also listened to something called CNS Candidate Office Hours, and I'll link that video below as well, and that's actually on the A&A YouTube page. And after listening to that video and then reading through these materials, it really put me in a position to feel more comfortable in approaching the exam. I learned that the exam actually is based off a job analysis study of current CNSs. And I loved this because, there's many standardized tests out there for many different professional fields. And the thing I like about the CNS exam is that it's not like the typical standardized exam. I wouldn't even call it really standardized. They'll detail this, and I believe it's on the website and also maybe in the handbook about the specific technique that they use to score the exam. There's a particular technique, I believe it's called the Angoff technique, and they have a psychometric consultant who they use to help develop the exam. But the point that I'm getting to is that the information you're getting tested on is the information you're going to be using in the field. And so I really love learning that because it made approaching studying a lot more relatable and easier, because it reassured me that I'm actually going to be using a lot of the information that I'm learning, and it's not just cram the material in my head for the test. It's learn this material and use it in practice as I'm preparing to take the exam. I hope that's making sense. So I really love learning about that. And the test is relevant, you guys. And so that's what I really, ended up loving about studying for this test. And so those are some starter tips I have for helping you to get comfortable with the exam and to really, cut off and combat the anxiety. A lot of times, when things are new and you really haven't, delved in a certain area, or you're approaching something that you're unfamiliar with for the first time, I think it's pretty normal to be to be a little bit nervous or unsure about how it's going to go. But if you complete those starter steps I just gave reading through the handbook, making sure you have the content outline, the scope of practice, and then watching those ALPHAS hours, you're going to be starting off at a really great place to help you be comfortable in approaching the exam. And I created a free checklist in my free resources group, and you can grab a copy of that checklist there, and it'll help you to get organized to prepare for the exam, including helping you to budget and kind of brainstorm how you want to approach prepping for the exam in a way that's suitable for your budget. So definitely check that out. That's in my free resources membership. And the second topic I want to talk to you about as like a practical tip on how to overcome being anxious about the exam is your organization as it relates to you approaching the exam. So when it comes to organizing yourself to take the CNS exam, I'm going to refer you also to my free resources membership because I have a handout in there that helps you to get yourself organized as it relates to approaching the exam, writing down what resources you'll use, and kind of gauging your level of comfortability with the material now. So definitely check that out because that'll help to give you a great launching pad to move forward. Or if you've already spent quite a bit of time studying, it's still a great resource to look at just to kind of check in to evaluate your own progress thus far. So definitely go to the free resources membership. I have that linked in the description below, and fill out that free handout. That'll help you. And then as you are studying, every day you prepare and sit down to study, practically, literally just keep these things beside you. Keep them beside you as you are studying just to help keep yourself on track. It's really easy because as nutrition professionals, you're excited, you love learning about nutrition. It can be easy to go a little bit too far in depth with certain topics. So keeping that content outline right beside you as you study is a really great practical tip, just so you can have it as a reminder, to stay on track. Really just stick to what is asked of you to know as it relates to the content outline. The reason for that is because this is where they're getting all the questions from. And so the test creators are drafting their questions from the content listed here. So really just stick to learning the material here. That definitely really helped me. And then again, on that long form video where I go over the scope of practice in depth, that's really a helpful video, you all. So I definitely recommend that you check that out because that'll definitely give you a lot more ease and comfortability moving forward if you really understand how to use the scope of practice to help you prepare. The third thing I want to tell you is to keep in mind, I've said this in our videos prior, and I think I said it in May's prep note as well as April's, and it is this concept of study, rehearse, practice, repeat. Okay, so study, rehearse, practice, repeat. And so studying, whenever you go to study, that's reviewing the content. Maybe you're learning some things you didn't learn in your education program. You're studying, you're taking notes, you may be highlighting. And then when it comes to rehearsing the information, this is where more of the application kind of comes in, is in your everyday life, rehearse that information. Tell yourself about the micronutrients. Maybe at the beginning of your studying, go through your list of micronutrients and remind yourself about what each one does, right? Or also, you can, whenever you eat in the morning, you can remind yourself and be like, and review the nutrients that are in the meal you're about to have. For example, you eat an egg. Well, in the yolk, it has vitamin D. What is vitamin D again? What is vitamin D3 again? It's a prohormone. It is also a fat-soluble vitamin. And what vitamin is often paired with vitamin D3 in supplements? Oh, that's vitamin K2. Well, why is that? That's because vitamin D3 helps you to absorb calcium, and vitamin K2 helps the calcium to be absorbed into the bone. And so things like that, I consider that rehearsing the information, and that is something that I did. Now, every time I ate, was I going through all the micronutrients? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But that's one tip on how to help you to rehearse the information. Maybe you create a handout for your client on certain nutrients that they need. That's one way to rehearse the information and put it into practice. And then as it relates to practice, completing practice questions and things like that. So that's just kind of like a practical tip for you on how to implement that in your studying process. And I truly believe that will help to combat any anxiety as it relates to the exam. Okay, so number 4 is take study breaks. And make sure you take study breaks, even as you're approaching your test date, even if you're testing, this June, for example. Don't be afraid to take study breaks. Your brain needs a break sometimes from just consuming, and that's okay. So if you take a day or 2 off, or, maybe it's several days, just depending, don't be afraid to do that. Give yourself a break, and then whenever you come back to studying from that break, take a little time to review what you studied in your last test session, in your last study session. So that's something that really helped me. I would spend no more than half an hour just reviewing the information that I went over in my last study session, especially when I would take breaks. And then even when I was studying daily, I would just take about 30 minutes or so just to review my last study session's material, so I could keep that in my brain, and then as I'm learning new information as well. And then I would take, practice questions, complete Quizlets, Brainscape decks, and things like that as well. So I highly recommend that. And then the 5th tip that I have for you is to be positive and believe that you can do this. This is just one stepping stone to becoming a CNS. So really celebrate your progress and celebrate your wins, and be positive and believe in yourself that you can do this. You can be successful on this exam. And so apply yourself. Definitely take advantage of the tips that I gave in this video, and just really get comfortable and settled in your preparation process. And I believe that you can be successful. So definitely take advantage of the resources I talked about in this video, the free resource library. I also have a paid resource called My Personal Study Blueprint, so definitely check that out, where I list step by step what I did to be successful on this exam, and I share with you the resources and the things that I use to prepare for this exam, low cost or free. So definitely check that out, and I'm wishing you all the absolute best. And just a reminder, don't be anxious about this exam. Follow these tips, and I believe that it'll help you to approach the exam more confidently. Stay tuned for the checklist at the end of this video, and remember, y'all, it's time to prep like you mean it. See y'all back next time.